Monaco last Sunday, Maxwell Boyd reporting. A pensive Colin Chapman, world champion racing car constructor, is hoping for an end to his bad luck. No World Championship victories so far this season, his latest cars smashed in crashes at the Spanish Grand Prix 3 weeks ago. Even his fellow world champion and #1 driver Graham Hill has to drive the car he used here last year. Although Hill has won 4 times already on this tight, cramped circuit through the streets and squares of this 250-acre principality, both men know that Jackie Stewart, Hill's one-time teammate, is leading the championship table and is hot favourite to win today. Can Hill and Chapman fend off the French challenge in one of the few sports where Britain can still beat the world? Hill's sinister helmet, shaped for better protection, lends him the air of a Roman gladiator ready for battle. Time for a final word of advice from old Monaco Victor Sterling Moss before he enters the arena. Ahead lie 80 laps, each with 9 full corners, names ringing with racing history like Gasworks, Tabac and Casino Corner. 2 of them bottom gear hairpins, 1 tunnel and a high-speed chicane. Nowhere can the cars reach full speed or the drivers ease off. On the start line, the tension tightens. Even royalty has eyes only for the 16 cars, all that can be crammed into the narrow, twisting track. World champion Graham Hill is back on the second row, beaten in practice by front row men Stewart and Amon. The air crackles with power. This is the drama and spectacle which can squeeze 250,000 people into a principality smaller than Hyde Park. For the wealthy jet-set swingers and the oily-fisted mechanics, there is now nothing to do but wait. These first seconds are vital. Inches won here can decide the whole pattern of the race. Already Stewart's Matra leads the pack procession after a faultless start. This is the moment of temptation when some drivers push on, balancing the need for a commanding lead against the extra punishment the car can take. Yet already on this very first lap, the remorseless pressure is taking its toll. Jackie Oliver's BRM is out after breaking its front suspension in a brush with Atwood's Lotus on the scramble for Saint-Devote corner just after the start. The others swarm on, wrapped in a blanket of noise. The backdrop is perfect. The hills, the brilliant Mediterranean, the Baroque hotels, adding up to the Monaco atmosphere like no other race in the world. A heroic survival from the days when cars raced on streets rather than tracks. It's the supreme test of driver skill. Monaco has no straights in racing terms. The corners blur together until the whole race becomes one long corner, snaking up and down and side to side like something alive. The drivers play for high stakes. A tiny error of judgment at a flat airfield circuit like Silverstone may spin a car onto the grass verge, losing the driver a few vital seconds. But the same mistake at Monaco could cost him the race at the very least. Curbstones, walls, gutters and seawater bind the track in a tight grip, leaving no margin for error. Only the spectators can afford to relax, to sunbathe, to lie on the deck of a yacht and watch the cars stream by. For them, like the drivers, Monaco is where it happens. Monaco is where it's at. For one spring weekend, this expensive slice of real estate is the center of the motor racing world. Back on the track, the race settles into its pattern. The cars string out, and a 5-yard lead here can be worth double on any other circuit. Extra power counts for little. but a mounting number of cars are missing from their places in the order. Amon's Ferrari has broken its specially strengthened transmission, Rodriguez's engine has given up, and Surtees missed a gear and Brabham crashed into him. As the drivers trail back to the pits, Stewart is 27 seconds ahead of Hill. But he pushes his car too hard, his transmission breaks, and he retires, leaving Hill in the lead. Suddenly the excitement begins to drain away, and for some the race is already as good as over. Aerofoils were very much in evidence at Thursday's first practice session as the drivers gathered in the quiet sunshine, among them McLaren, Amon, Courage, one of the few privateers, and Rodriguez, BRM, not tipped to win, but the car has a good record at Monaco. Odds-on favourite Stewart and Jack Brabham, 3 times world champion, the oldest driver in top-class motor racing, and a cunning and resourceful opponent. Chris Amon, the young Ferrari driver, a potential world champion, hoping that Monaco will end his series of frustrating breakdowns. And Vic Elford, still a relatively new recruit to Grand Prix racing from the world of international rally driving. And finally, Hill, still hoping for a win to help catch up on Stewart's 18 points. Meanwhile, in the back streets, in garages hidden from the track, the careful work of preparation goes on. Suspension settings and gear ratios are checked and altered as the cars are tuned to the demands of the circuit and the weather. This long, detailed, hard work may only save fractions of a second a lap, but added up over the whole race may mean the difference between first place and 10th.
It's a little bit too high, actually.
So you can cut it down a bit.
Yeah.
So specialised are modern racing cars that each one fits its driver like an extra suit of overalls. Stewart, a Scot now living in Switzerland and driving a French car, entered by an English team manager, is typical of motor racing's international attitude. Rated by many as the best Grand Prix driver today, 1969 could well be Stewart's championship year, and his French car looks like providing the first serious threat to British domination since Surtees won for Ferrari in 1964. Aerofoils have added another stage to the tuning process. These thin, spidery wings play an important part in improving the car's road holding, using the airflow to push it down onto the track. But in earlier races, several of these wings have collapsed at speed, causing spectacular crashes. Even so, no one dreams of doing without them, although on a slow course like Monaco, their heavier load on transmissions, always a weak point here, could make them a mixed blessing. Hill is at his best in practice. His engineering background and his sharp mechanical sympathy lets him work closely with the mechanics in honing a car to the razor edge of performance. But he faces very tough opposition from today's Flying Scotsman Jackie Stewart. The time to beat is 1 minute 24.9 seconds, a full 3 seconds faster than last year's best. Hill comes fairly close with 1 minute 25.6, and behind him Ix manages 1 minute 26. Swiss driver Joe Siffert is half a second behind Ix, followed by Piers Courage and Brabham with a time of 1 minute 27.6. But most drivers, like Chris Amon, had plenty to worry about. He had a sick engine to contend with, a depressing addition to the list of troubles he's endured since he joined Ferrari. McLaren was experimenting with a new front wing as well as the normal rear aerofoil. The BRMs had a 2-wing system with a front spoiler, and Matra had adopted the same idea. Gradually, the cars are inched up to peak performance. Lap times are shaved by fractions of a second. Vital components are checked to see how they stand up to the strain, and faults are traced and worked out one by one. The mechanics try different adjustments, and the effects are measured. Finished for the day, Hill is still dissatisfied at his failure to equal Stewart's performance. Once a mechanic himself, Hill knows better than most the value of teamwork. His pit crew earn their pay 10 times over, juggling with the car's spiderweb framework. It's delicate and exacting work with a car built to Chapman's philosophy of lightness and strength, but Hill's experience eases their task. He can tell exactly what needs to be done to make the car behave as he wants. And if all else fails, he's not above taking a spanner and doing the job himself. A hard afternoon's work for everyone, yet, as Michael Frostick describes, an afternoon that, in fact, was completely wasted.
It seems that we can never come to Monte Carlo for either a rally or a Grand Prix without a row of some sort. And this year, the row was about aerofoils. It all started before the first practice on Thursday with the club saying that they weren't, after the accidents in Spain, going to allow aerofoils on this circuit. The reason being that further down the road here at the Tabac corner, some of the brickwork overhangs the track and they were afraid people were going to knock the aerofoils off and they were going into the crowd. Well, then the fun started. Matra said that their cars have been designed to have aerofoils. There was nothing in the international regulations against them and they weren't taking them off. Rudd at BRM said that although there was nothing in the regulations, if it was going to be a danger to the public, the manufacturers would have to give way. Well, that's what he said, but nevertheless they had aerofoils on. Lotuses came out looking like good boys, saw everybody else wasn't being good boys, and put their aerofoils back on again. So we had a Thursday practice with everybody in aerofoils. At the end of the practice, we had a public announcement that there was going to be a meeting of the CSI at 5:30 and a meeting of the constructors at 6:30, and then the fun really began. They decided that there weren't going to be aerofoils and everybody would have to take them off. There was a slight diversion while people argued about whether you could have aerofoils that came inside the back wheels or whether if they weren't so high. And everybody explained that you couldn't muck about with the things, you'd either have to take them off or leave them on. And as only half the people were at either of the meeting, and this is quite usual in Grand Prix racing, you never get everybody to do anything, the constructors that were there turned round to the club and said, well, you'll have to make up your minds. Either tell us to take them off or tell us to leave them on. So the club stuck to its guns and said take them off, which everybody did. The Metropole bar was full of people moaning about the fact that the tyres weren't right and the shock absorbers weren't right and everything else. And then everybody got up at the crack of dawn on Friday morning and went out on the circuit. Aerofoils are missing, and the question in everybody's mind is whether they're ever going to come back or not. It looks fairly likely that later on in the year they will be banned forever, and this might not be a bad thing because, for one thing, it looks as though more people will finish races. That was Ford's point of view anyway, which was something for the public. And it's likely, I think, to bring on much faster the future of four-wheel drive, which is surely going to be a very big thing for Grand Prix racing. So let's hope that out of the mess and the row and the argument, some good is going to come.
These were the hopes of everyone in the pits as the cars appeared for Friday's practice. Matra's Ken Tyrrell had already said that banning the aerofoils would hit Stewart and Beltoir's hardest since their cars had been designed around the wings. Could Stewart repeat his earlier lead? Hill's Lotus, naked without its aerofoils, looked like a page from racing history, so familiar had wings become. Even the front spoilers were different, since the new rules demanded that they should not protrude above the bodywork or outside the wheels. Up and down the row of pits, mechanics used files and hacksaws in frantic last-minute surgery. The Ferrari mechanics fit a curved rear spoiler used before wings arrived last year, but Matra would rely on front spoilers only. This kind of last-minute drama may add excitement to the event, but it always means still more work for the already hard-pressed pit crews. It was controversy at a crucial stage, and right at the centre of the drama, a British contribution to the royal patronage, the Duke of Kent and his brother Prince Michael. At last, the changeover complete, practice begins again. Was Hill to take over the lead, or would his wingless Lotus drop him down the list? But in fact, the stripped cars went as quickly as ever. Although Hill's car lacked the rear spoiler it had last year, before the advent of wings, his best times were only 1/5 of a second slower than his best Thursday times had been. Perhaps the wings had made little difference after all. This is where those tiny improvements and adjustments prove their value. By now, only 2 seconds separated the times of Stewart and Atwood, 10th in practice order. A couple of inches chipped off a corner here, a slightly better line to avoid the camber there, or to make use of a favourable line somewhere else. A familiarity with every square inch of tortuous tarmac which make up the circuit. This is what separates the leaders from the also-rans. Round station hairpin and bottom gear. A driver has little to gain, but everything to lose here. Round the fast right-hander and into the darkness of the tunnel. Accelerating hard down to the chicane, moved further along since Bandini's fatal accident 2 years ago. Then along the quayside to Tabac, Gasworks and the pits. Difficult enough in practice when each driver has only his own problems to worry about. No chance for him to enjoy the sights and sounds with Michael Frostig.
Monaco is always special for the drivers because it's a different circuit and it has its own problems. But it's also pretty special for the town, a town which is, in a way, never anything other than special. There's a rally and there are operas and concerts and motorboat races. There's something in Monaco every week, but nothing quite as special as the Grand Prix. And you have to remember that this little principality, hedged in with mountains, is only 250 acres, about the size of a medium-sized farm, and it normally houses 100,000 people. Incidentally, only 1 in 100 of which is a monegasque, and this weekend it'll be housing probably another 100,000 more, which means there's a premium on every bedroom, there aren't enough waiters to go round, there aren't even enough drinks, everything costs a fortune, and while down the road in France they're trying to recover from the biggest political upheaval they've had for, I don't know, donkey's years, it's rather nice to see all this excitement, all this bread and circuses going on in the little principality, even if you have to pay through the nose for it. And you pay through the nose for everything in this place. This thing that looks like a parking meter is just a way of charging the boat owners for fresh water.
But is this race the most difficult test a Grand Prix driver has to face?
Well, it's one of them, mainly because it's so tight and twisty, and there's no real straights where you can sit back and have a bit of a deep breath and think about what's going on. In fact, we're probably changing gear about 16 times a lap, so that's 1,600 gear changes, and probably work out about 1 every 5 seconds. So apart from changing gear, we've got to conduct ourselves in the car around the circuit in a proper fashion, and at the same time scan the gauges every now and then, the rev count, of course, every time you come to change gear, and eyeball all the corners. So, and as it's only 1.9 miles round, and you've got hotels, shops, trees, the sea, the quayside, nightclubs, all of which to circumnavigate, as it were, you're kept rather busy.
How much are you aware of the people and the shops and the hotels when you're going around?
Not at all. Yeah. In fact, obviously you get a general sort of vista, and but you're not aware of the people. But you can. Sometimes you're looking straight at them, and you know they're there, but of course it doesn't register. I mean, it's just a kaleidoscope of colour, which of course is very attractive if you've got time to admire the view.
How far would it be true to say that Monaco's a better engineering development ground for a car than a lot of other races?
Well, I don't know.
Not really.
Really, you've got to look at it first things first, and it's a spectator sport. So this is the place to come in May. It's lovely weather, it's a fantastic race, tremendous atmosphere, and that's the first thing you've got to look at. It's a tremendous race and a great one to come and watch. And if anybody's going to come and see a Grand Prix, this is really the one to go. It's such a nice place to be anyway. And then secondly, we can start thinking about development. Well, really, I think that's a sort of an offshoot, a byproduct, a bit of fallout from motor racing. And I don't think it's so important as actually putting on a damn good spectacle that everyone wants to come and see.
Back on the circuit, everyone watches the spectacle nearing its end. Hill is still in the lead with no real competition in sight. All he has to do is keep going to the end, itself a challenge at Monaco. Behind him, virtually all the battles are over, with only Courage, Siffert, Atwood, McLaren, Halm and Elford left in the race. Jackie Ickx, after fighting Courage hard for second place over 25 laps, finally dropped out just after half distance when a rear suspension upright sheared on his Brabham. The last change in position was on lap 58, when Atwood in the second Lotus passed McLaren into 4th place. Not that it was an easy race. Pierce Courage has driven well to hold 2nd place. The end is in sight, and Hill's teammates spur him on to his 5th Monaco victory. But there's still plenty of time for something to break, for Hill's iron concentration to flag, and for him to brush a curb or lose a wheel against a wall. Other drivers have done it, but Hill is careful, a professional to his fingertips. This is no time to do something silly, and he knows it. With no one near enough to be dangerous, he eases off and his lap times drop. Interest revives in the last few minutes of the race. From bars and bistros, boats and balconies, the crowd swells as everyone converges on the focus of the finishing line to see Hill take the race.
Willie, you did a fabulous job there.
Betty Hill, professional to the end, and Colin Chapman, their run of bad luck broken by the world champion's textbook performance in how to win a motor race. So Hill and Chapman back in the championship, winning again. This time, after near disaster at Barcelona, they have staved off the Matra challenge. But Monaco is a circuit where a driver with Hill's qualities can do better in a slower car than anywhere else. In a month's time at Zandvoort, 4-wheel drive, a faster circuit, and the decision confirmed today that aerofoils as we know them are banned once and for all mean that anything can happen. But for the time being, champagne and cheers. A repeat of Monaco 1968. Same car, same driver, same result. A win that's becoming a habit for Graham Hill. How does he manage it?
Well, first of all, you've got to finish. Yeah. Then you've got to have a car that's capable of finishing, and then you've got to have a bit of luck.
Does it mean you've got to take it a damn sight more easier earlier on than the other boys?
I think that this is probably one of the most grueling races in the calendar for the driver and the machine. Engine, transmission, suspension, brakes, a lot, and it certainly pays to try and conserve the car and yourself if you can. But at the same time, you still want to win. So you've got a choice. Either you go flat out and try and annihilate the opposition and hope your car's going to stay in one piece, or you try and drive your own race and resist the temptation to try and keep up with them or forge ahead. You know, it's a question of really suck it and see, and I think over the years it certainly seems to pay off.